This month we have a panel discussion on diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And I will turn it over once I stop screen sharing to the moderators, and they can introduce themselves, and I'll turn off everyone else's video. Everyone else turn off your video if you're not a moderator or a panelist, please, so I don't have to do it. And we'll go from there. So let's see. Valarie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, interwebs. I'm Valarie Regas. I'm a DevOps engineer at Airbus, and I am passionate about diversity and inclusion in the workplace for all sorts of reasons, mostly because it makes good business sense, and I'm a capitalist at heart. So I am so excited to be here tonight, and I'm actually taking a break from the beach to be here. Speaking of working remotely from Maine and such, I'm in Florida. I put down my fruity beverage and I'm here to discuss this important topic, and I'm very excited. We've got some great panelists. Let's start with Erica Stanley. Madam, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Stanley. I'm Senior Engineering Manager at Mozilla. I work on the mixed reality team on Firefox Reality. And I also do quite a bit of community work. I started Atlanta's network of Women Who Code back in 2013. And I also work with the directors of Women Who Code, Angel and Beth. Also work on a conference called Refactor. Both are very focused on inclusion and diversity and how we can make tech a more inclusive place.
Awesome. If you've not been to Refactor, by the way, it's one of my favorite conferences, and I go to a lot of them. It's a really, really good one. We've also got with us Anthony Tessman.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? All right. Well, Anthony Tessman here. I'm from the IBM Corporation. I'm in corporate HR, so I have a specific focus on the recruitment of diverse talent, right, across the business. I hire for all business units. So from a corporate HR perspective, as you can imagine, IBM is silos of businesses, systems, software, services, etc. So I feel demand from a diversity standpoint for those business units. I've been with IBM going on 23 years now. I served in a variety of roles. So I started IBM as a seller, right? Inner city kid myself from the Bronx, New York, and really kind of made my name in the sales arena and moved over to corporate HR. So excited to, share some perspectives with you all tonight and hope I can deliver some value.
Oh, that's awesome. Really excited to get your perspective on some things. Our last panelist is going to be Brian Trejo. We want to introduce yourself, sir?
Sure thing. Hey everybody, Brian Trejo, by day product manager at the Home Depot, focused on everything payments pretty much, so everything .com payments. And by night, I, similar to Erica, actually started the chapter of Tequeria, which is the largest community of Latinx technologists in the US. So started the Atlanta chapter here, co-leading that with another wonderful product manager, Margarita Caraballo, who works at MailChimp. Yeah, excited to be here.
That is awesome. So I always like to, if we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion, these are words that get thrown out a lot in meetings, words that people like to use to sound progressive, but they don't always know what they actually mean. Would one of our panelists like to just start out by explaining what demarks diversity and inclusion, the difference, and how those actually are practiced?
Well, I was going to let my peers go first, right? I always hate to be the first one to take a stab at it. So, from my perspective, from my standpoint, diversity for me, when I'm out on the field and I'm searching for talent, is uniqueness, right? And uniqueness can come in a variety of angles, race, religion, political beliefs, across the board. So it's really, to me, the core is the uniqueness of a human being, and how that uniqueness delivers value to the roles that I'm seeking. And so that's diversity in a nutshell to me, which is different than inclusion, right? Inclusion simply infers just that. We have people in the world with what we call diverse abilities, right? It used to be people with disabilities. So diverse abilities, just because that human being has a diverse ability doesn't mean they cannot deliver value at an accelerated pace, right? So, they're kind of two different pockets there from a diversity inclusion perspective. That's the Anthony Tessman view.
It's a great view. Yeah, I'm always amused when people talk about D&I, and I think people conflate diversity and inclusion. Diversity being representation from all sorts of different groups of people, and inclusion being a welcoming, supportive, useful work environment where people are treated with respect. And I think the inclusion part's always a lot harder than the diversity part.
Can I add something on to that too, Valarie? So I like to think of it like diversity is a metric. Diversity is something that honestly is a lagging indicator for inclusion in a lot of ways. So your comment about how inclusion is harder, I think it's harder because that's where you start the work. And you don't see the benefit of that work until you start to see more diversity on your teams. If you go the other way and you start working towards diversity before you have determined, whether this is an inclusive team, you're really just going to see a lot of turnover. If you're going to bring the first woman, the first person of color, the first person with disabilities onto the team, and you haven't done a little bit of introspection to determine, what are the ways that we need to make this team more inclusive, that person is just going to end up facing all of, you've brought that person into a toxic environment is what you've done. And that person is going to face all of the issues we see with diversity and inclusion before you can fix them, because diversity is that lagging indicator.
Oh yeah. So I would like to kind of address why diversity is an admirable goal. And I'm always quick to point out to people, it's not about feeling good or being a good person, even from a business perspective. I think it's Kim Creighton always says that diversity and inclusion are risk management issues. Like, just if you would like to have a successful business, you have to have a diverse team with lots of perspectives. Can y'all sort of address why that is, why it matters?
I think you hit it right on the nose with that. I mean, it brings a diverse set of perspectives when you have a diverse team. Take, for example, what happened with Snapchat not too long ago with the filters, things like that. They're getting in a lot of trouble on and off again, simply because, I figure that the people that are on the other side of the table there aren't diverse. And these are things that somebody that, comes from that background would instantly recognize as an issue. But from the business perspective, there are opportunities that some folks that are taking up these spaces maybe wouldn't consider. Take, for example, I work in payments, the underbanked, unbanked population. That's something that you would see commonly amongst Black and brown folk. And it's a conversation that you haven't really heard of, at least internally within Home Depot. So it's something that, is a perspective that I would bring from the table as somebody that grew up in a household that was largely underbanked. And so I think from a business perspective, it can open up and uncover some new opportunities for the business. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I think Brian hit it right on. When you deliver an innovative solution, so from an IBM standpoint, we deliver innovation to our clients, and you need diverse teams to deliver that differentiated value, right? And so from a teaming aspect, if you don't have a diverse team, your success is not as strong as it could be. And throughout the organization, many organizations have pockets where there are lack of diversity, right? And sometimes that will show in their business results, right? So from a recruitment standpoint, I'm a black male, right? And so I go to the HBCU, which is historically black colleges and universities, to recruit. You can't really, it won't be as effective to send a white colleague of mine to get the same result. It's not a racial thing, it's more of a culture embracing kind of thing. And I think as we start looking at diversity, we have to also look at the cultural requirements. Even Native Americans, right? A lot of Native Americans go to school, get a degree, but they return to their reservation to bring that skill set. Whereby, you as a recruiter is like, hey, you get ready to graduate, we got a job. No, that's not how their culture works. So I think diversity of mind, diversity of skill set, and diversity of execution delivers innovation, in our work, in our world from a global aspect. And when you lack that, your business results show that in subtle ways. Again, an Anthony Tessman opinion, right? My remarks don't represent IBM, just put my disclaimer out there, right?
And I would add also, kind of getting into some of those business results, you're leaving money on the table oftentimes if you're not thinking through diversity and inclusion, building products for all people. And if you don't have a diverse team that can ask those hard questions that you need to when you're at the beginning of building a product, a lot of times they never make it into the product. And now you've created a product that only solves solutions for a subset of people. And so there's so many people of different backgrounds that you've now left money on the table. You've created something that a large group of people can't use.
Absolutely. And, I'm always amused by sort of products gone wrong because of, a homogenous development team. I mean, one of my favorites was a manufacturer of pool floaties. They produced this float for going to the pool, and it was white with a blue strip down the center, and they thought it was so beautiful. It looked like a maxi pad, and they didn't have a single woman on the team who designed this to let them know, wow, guys, that looks like a menstrual product. And so they released this product, and it was, obviously a flop, a fun flop. It's good business to get different perspectives and have that person at the table who can say, I'm a Newton Bitter. Maybe we should rethink this. And one of our audience members threw out the example of the facial recognition fiascos that have gone on. Also, the automatic soap dispensers that can only sense white skin. I mean, these are things that are not conducive to making all the money, which I feel like is a very American ideal. So how do we get to, obviously you want to start with inclusion and make sure that your workplace is a supportive place for all candidates to come and be successful. How do we start moving towards making sure that our teams, our offices, that we are supporting people of all different abilities, cultures, and backgrounds?
Oh, I can jump to that one because that's kind of in my bailiwick, right? First and foremost, for me, from a recruitment standpoint, and I heard Vince mention earlier, he's been in the recruiting arena for years. The recruiting dynamic has changed, right? It used to be big companies come around and everybody goes running and peddling. Now candidates want you to market to them. They want you to know them, right? So from a diversity standpoint, ensuring that there's an equal playing field, a lot of business units or hiring managers have specific universities that they like, might be their alma mater. We have to break those trends, right? That's number one. Just because, this student goes here and that's an alma mater, had you looked at the lack of diversity on your team and the skill sets of this diverse candidate? Let's measure them together. So I hold my business units accountable because I make a sincere impact for the IBM across the business, right? So it's really understanding the business requirements, and you have to find the talent to fill those requirements. So we can't just say, I want a Black person, we don't have any Black people, or we don't have any Latino people. Okay, perhaps that skill set is a rarity. Like, for example, cognitive developers, right? You know, you guys know about the cognitive developers are kind of hard to find in the diversity space, right? And then there's also, you know, I got to kind of throw this out there, you know, the systems of systemic racism, right? As you look at the assessment tools of today, you know, they're all over the place. As an HBCU student, you're in a computer science program. The school is primarily engineering, but they've carved out a computer science, but they haven't really prepared you with the tools of assessment. You're ready to go code and, you know, however, but you have HackerRank, you have CoderBite, you have all these assessment tools that tend to be barriers for our students of color. So that's why I came up with the HBCU Blue Movement program. I built this up with nothing but volunteers within the business, people of color. I have about 47 people, instructors, coordinators, and mentors that actually deliver the program. It's a boot camp. And I identified diverse students leveraging the different sourcing tools that we have today, Handshake, etc. I identify the students, and you know, they have to take a pre-assessment, right? You need to have the foundational skills to get in my program. It's 10 weeks, right? You earn a badge. So I take these candidates, right? Don't apply to anything at IBM. You know, wait till I finish you up. And then I present these candidates to the business. So there's no question about their skill sets and their ability, because I've trained them. I use all the tools that we assess them on, no question. So I think that it's a rebuilding of our systems to ensure that there's a pathway and funnel for diverse candidates. Just, you know, on all spectrum, right? You know, we have to ensure that our candidates from a diversity standpoint are armed properly to compete and fill those roles. And then our machine continues to run.
Absolutely. I love that. I always like to think about, you know, you want to hire the best person for the job. And, you know, you talked about going to certain alma maters and recruiting in certain places. If you're only recruiting in places that typically are occupied by a certain kind of person, and that's where you're recruiting, you're not getting the best person for the job. You're getting the best person from that subset for the job. I mean, I think of diversity hiring not as checking a box or trying to, you know, collect the set of humans. It's finding the best people, the brightest, the most creative, but you have to get out there and make sure that you're recruiting from all the different places to make sure that who you're getting is the best for the role. How can we support those efforts as team members? You know, for example, if there's a job opening where I work, I'm likely to put that up on Women Who Code or send it to a friend I have at Dev/Color and try to, you know, move that information to different groups. How else can we be supportive of getting the best candidates and making sure that we're reaching diverse populations of people?
I mean, I think that's a really great way of doing it. Is there's all these really awesome organizations here in Atlanta and beyond Atlanta that primarily focus on that particular diverse set of candidates. So like, say, Tequeria, Latinx technologists, on average 4 years of work experience across the board. You know, 6+ years if you were to look at the higher end here. So they're out there. It's just a matter of being able to have relationships with these organizations and be able to post these jobs within their boards, support what they're doing to be able to continue building up and expanding as well. And I know kind of to touch on that a little bit more, not only thinking about, you know, as a community organizer, not only thinking about my own organization, but as you said, Valarie, plugging other organizations that are doing equal work elsewhere for different communities, like Women Who Code, like DevColor, like Technologists of Color. You know, there's many organizations here in Atlanta that do a lot of really good, like Out in Tech, and being able to make sure that they have also that opportunity to plug to their folks of like, hey, these are these really great opportunities at this company. I vouch for them. Post.
And then something that you mentioned, Brian, was kind of building those relationships. And I think it ties back into something that Anthony was saying, where he was talking about, he actually goes out to a lot of the HBCUs where he's recruiting. I've gone to, different meetups or user groups or different places where I knew this was a group outside of, say, the typical places we might recruit. I've gone to schools that we typically would not recruit at, just to make sure that we are gathering from a large pool. And I think that's really important, is to make sure that your pool is as diverse as you can make it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're recruiting from diverse locations. We're trying to get the best candidates in. Can we talk about what it's like to be the first of an underrepresented group in the workplace? I mean, the look on some of my coworkers' faces the first time I talked about ex-girlfriends, because I do have a husband, so they were like, "What?" Yeah. I have a disability. I have complex PTSD, and it makes me quirky. Being the first person in an office to discuss differences or to look different, what have your experiences been like over the years, either on your own behalf or with coworkers, trying to navigate being different?
Man, that is so good you said that. I was waiting for that. So I'm sorry, guys. I got to jump into this one because I got one for you. So as I shared with you, I've been with IBM for 23 years. I started out here in Atlanta. I've been my whole career in the state of Georgia. I started out as the only black person on the state of Georgia sales team, right? It's like 19. Okay. When I was first put on board, they gave me the worst accounts. If you guys are from Georgia, there's a town called Ocilla. You go down 75, way down about 3 hours. You get off 75 and you go about 10 miles of cotton fields and old slave shacks. I mean, it is really, there's a company called Tanner Medical down there, So they gave me that account. And my first trip out there, and I'm from New York, so I'm not from the South. I didn't come here with that, mindset. And I'm also a veteran, right? So I do have a concealed firearms license, so I travel without fear. So, I go down here, and it was so rural, and it was no black. I felt like I was set up. So I went there, the customer was tolerant, right? So, I was driving back after an hour and a half of discussion with nothing but older Southern white men, knowing they didn't receive me. I'm not going to sell anything, just crushed. 3-hour ride down there, mind you, from Atlanta. So on my way back, I thought about it. I said, I'm a strong, intelligent black man. Plus, I want to make all the money on the team. I don't want no one on the team making more money. And I'm going to loop you in too, Brian, at Home Depot. So I thought about it. I recruited 2 peers, young ladies, blonde hair, blue eyes, very appeasing to the eyes. Brought them on my next sales call. Closed the deal. First deal in South Georgia, 2.7 million. So, I'm riding back. I'm feeling really good. I got a lead for Home Depot, which you guys office right there on Pacey's Ferry. I don't know if you know about their IT infrastructure, but they used to buy Power Series, RS-6000s, Unix servers. I closed that whole deal, and you guys sold those worldwide, globally. It was your back-end POS system. I raked in big dough my 3rd year at IBM. So I had to go through that to earn respect, dignity. There was nobody I could lean to, or now obviously that's changed over the years, but this is a large company where there's no overt open racism, but the accounts I was assigned and the quota that I was to attain was just ridiculous, right? So that was me. Yes, I experienced it at IBM in my first years. but I went into it with a different mindset. Instead of feeling victimized, isolated, disrespected, and marginalized, I propelled myself that I'm better than all of you all. Watch my pockets grow, right? And so that was my winning piece to overcome it. You know, sort of was your question, Valerie. You know, how did you overcome it? I won, right? I won. So that's, you know, just the Anthony Tessman personal story there with IBM.
What about you, Erica?
So I'd say for the first 10 years of my career, I was always the only, whether it was the only Black person, the only woman, the only Black woman. And so, but the experience was different on different teams. There were teams where, of course, I was the only person that looked like me, but I didn't feel that way. And then there were teams where I was constantly reminded that I'm the only person that looks like me. And on those teams, I would say there was this kind of constant proving yourself. And to Anthony's point, I just made sure that every time that came up, I just stunk them. I just made sure that they regretted questioning my skill set in that case. I had a situation where I was fresh out of grad school. I did a few years towards a PhD at UNC. And then ended up going into web development because at the time, everyone I had done a lot of 3D interactive graphics for my specialization. And at the time, everybody wanted people with like 10 years of experience, and I was 24. So I did not have 10 years of 3D development experience. So I went into web development, and I was at a company, and we had to like build a pie chart or something, and it required math and it required trig. Again, I just came from a PhD program doing 3D math and algebra and physics. And there were all of these questions of, we don't know if she can do it. We don't know if she can do the math, the trigonometry that I had in 10th grade necessary to do this. And so it was supposed to be this huge project that we were supposed to take months to do. And I was so mad when I went home. A friend of mine worked there with me, and he was just kind of like, he had the whole eating the popcorn meme going, because he was like, what is she gonna do? I literally went home and finished it that night. I finished all of my responsibility that night, and they never questioned again whether I could do the math. So that was something I had to face early in my career. It's less now. And I've also kind of I've been in a position where I don't have to do that anymore. And so I think that's important to say and to address for the next person coming behind you, so that they don't constantly have to go through these arbitrary tests of you know, do they belong here, when they pass the interview just like everyone else and they do the work like everyone else. So as I grew in my career, I got to the point where I said, I don't have to do this, and I'm not. And I think that makes a difference, standing up for yourself in that way. I think that makes a difference, not just for you, but for the people coming behind you.
Brian, have you had similar experiences with this sort of feeling that, like we've just heard two personal stories where you're coming in, you maybe look different or you're seen as different, and you have to prove yourself to be not just sufficient, but the best to get by? Have you had similar experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking that it's just like, ain't that some shit where you have to work 2 times, 5 times, 10 times as hard just to prove yourself, as opposed to some of your peers who are coming into the same level and they're doing, you know, they're just getting by. And you really have to go above and beyond to prove yourself. And for me, that's definitely something that I've, you know, similar to Erica, I've sort of pumped the brakes on that over the years, just as I've gained more experience. You know, my resume sort of speaks for itself now. But early on in my career, I would do something similar, like be it data crunching, be it pitches that I have to give for internal features that we want to develop. I actually been on email threads where they thought that I wasn't on there, and they were like, I don't think you can actually do this, like, don't waste your time. And that just fired me up. And I mean, naturally, I'm very competitive. I ran cross country and track in college. So that competitive fire, it was just always something in the back of my head of, never being enough and wanting to go above and beyond and prove that I am. And I mean, still to this day, and, you know, I kind of see it as a competitive advantage for lack of better words, is that we're always going to be working harder and until we realize that we don't have to. But by then, you know, we're going to have a long trail of successes behind us, and hopefully that same trail is the trail that others, other Black and brown folk can also travel on, knowing that we've pioneered that path for them, and, you know, we've opened some doors for them as well.
I love that you mentioned that. So, you know, I feel like in this life, anytime we go through something particularly difficult, one of the goals should be to make it so that other people don't have to go through the same negative experiences. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, mentoring other people who are maybe different, and the difference between mentoring and sponsoring, and kind of get in and discuss that piece. Who wants to take that one?
Sure. So I would say the difference between mentoring is advising someone. I would say sponsorship is advocating for that person. Anyone can be a mentor to you, but to be a sponsor, they need to be able to get in places that you might not naturally be able to access. So to give an example, you might have someone who gives you advice on the programming language you want to learn to get into machine learning. And then on the other side, you might have someone sponsor you and say, well, you know, Valarie has been learning Python and she's been kicking butt, and I think she's ready for this project. And so that's the difference between a mentorship relationship, which is important, but also sponsorship. And I think a lot of cases, people are given a lot of advice and told what's the right thing to do without getting the opportunities, without getting the foot in the door, without getting someone who can speak for them when they're not in the room.
I agree with Erica. We call them power sponsors, right? You can have a ton of mentors throughout your career, but can they really, you know, help your trajectory or get you where you need to go? So the sponsor is more action oriented and your mentor is more developmental.
So how can we be good sponsors? How can we, as teammates and as people in the industry, how can we go about knowing who needs to be spoken for, who needs to be supported, who needs to be advanced, and how can we go about being those sponsors and lifting up other people?
So something I've picked up from my time at Women Who Code is we all enjoy kind of pushing people and making them feel uncomfortable. Valarie's nodding. And so finding that thing that when you ask someone about it, they're like, I don't know, but you can tell that they're interested. Finding opportunities for them to do that. And making sure that when they get that opportunity, and as you see them growing and making a lot of progress, that they get opportunities for visibility as well. There's actually getting the opportunity to do the work is something that might be high profile, but then it's getting the visibility that this person succeeded, this person accomplished this. And that's something that I think doesn't happen in when you're dealing with people from marginalized backgrounds a lot. We don't always know how to speak up for ourselves in that way, or to speak up for our accomplishments. And so I am happy to be that person to speak up for someone else. I have a friend who is a principal engineer at Microsoft. And if anyone's ever worked at Microsoft, you know how hard the principal title is to attain. And it's quite an accomplishment. And when she introduces herself, a lot of times she just says, I work at Microsoft. And it's like, no, she is a principal engineer at Microsoft. And I might talk about some of the projects she's worked on. So doing those kind of things when people don't feel comfortable doing it, or they're not in a position to do it, I think is one way we can sponsor.
So I'm a little bit of a cynic, and I'm a lot of bit of a cynic. And I won't say that I believe all people are inherently selfish, except they are. So I would like to kind of touch on the fact that, you know, sometimes when we talk about, you know, being inclusive in the workplace and these initiatives, I think sometimes there's a sense of altruism about it, but I'd like to touch on how doing the right thing from an ethical and moral perspective actually can help you further your own career. Things like if you are sponsoring someone and supporting them and also mentoring them, it makes you look good to be that person who's helping, that person who's fostering new talent. What are some other like benefits to the individual who's doing the right thing? And, you know, how can people basically, it sounds awful, but use being a good person to also further their career?
So that's a good one, right? So because I'm in recruitment, that's what I do, right? I impact lives and change lives. So I get a lot of fulfillment in that alone. And my rewards are really, you know, I'll see, well, before we could go to buildings, I've been working remote for the last 13 years, so this is nothing new to me. I'm the kind of guy that would like to go to an office sometime. Yeah, I need to make 100 copies. You know, I'm going to come by. You going to be around? And I run into somebody that I've recruited, you know, years ago. I didn't forgot them. You know, I kind of love and move. And it's sort of, oh, man, how you doing? I've had students. I had a student that had a diverse ability, and I was sponsoring a hackathon, one of these IBM hackathons, and no one would choose him for a team. Anyway, I got him on his own team. He put his own project together. I think he was a C++ guy. Phenomenal. So I says, all right, I really like this kid. I'm going to have him come to our hackathon in RTP in Raleigh. And so I told him, sent him the email. His mother called me. His mother. You know, his mother was like, well, she didn't know who I was. Did I know, you know, her son's status kind of thing? She was really wanting to protect her son. And so she called me and she was, you know, very abrasive. You know, my son told me XYZ. I need to understand, you know, where's he going? Who's going to be taking him? And I let her go through it. Any event, to make a long story short, I got him to RTP, flew out of Hartsville. You know, I had somebody there, other students going. I got that boy a job, right? I got him through the hackathon. I got him a job. His mother was so grateful. She wanted my address. She wanted to send me something. I was like, nah, time out. You know, I appreciate all that. But those are the things for me. So I don't really look for any tangible value other than, you know, that feeling, that warm feeling I get by helping the next person change their lives, right? You know, so that's me. So I sponsor a lot of the students that may not have that visibility, that we may not normally source, that we may not normally seek. I identify those students, I nurture them up, and I sponsor them into the business. You see what I'm saying? So I do that on a regular. It's a little bit above and beyond my role, right? I'm supposed to identify and send, but I take that extra step. So that's how I take it. You know, just it's a personal accomplishment for me.
What about you, Brian? What are your thoughts on this one?
On mentorship versus sponsorship.
And how it personally impacts the person doing the work and helping, how it helps the helper.
Yeah, I mean, I think you, as you mentioned earlier, like it's definitely helping the person that's actually giving the accolades to whoever it is that's receiving them on the other end. I think often, I mean, you know, we get folks that are leaders saying like, oh yeah, that person's good, but I want you to assign X person because they just have a track record of delivering whatever it may be. But you know, say for instance, this person, Maria, she's, you know, a really good engineer, but then you got this other person, Mike, who's always giving the top line projects and always, you know, getting the credit for everything that he's delivered. But Maria's really solid person and a really solid engineer. And so, you know, being able to pick those people out and saying like, no, I think I really want to work with Maria on this. Let's have Dylan, or let's have whoever that person is, Mike, whoever that person is, focus on other things, gives that opportunity for them to actually step into a role that maybe they didn't previously see themselves engaging in, whatever that work may be. And then also as that person taking them through as that sponsor, making sure that you're properly giving them the credit where credit is due of, you know, this person achieved X, presenting them to other people outside of their own organization. So for Home Depot, product and engineering sort of sit on separate sides of the table. So the engineers operate within their own silos, products over here. And so whenever there's an opportunity like that, I make sure to pull out those engineers to say like, hey, product team, like here's my engineer that worked on this project. They did a really great job. Let them present it, just so that there's a little bit more of that human factor as well. Because I think that's often forgotten whenever these sort of accolades are being given out between two different groups, is that there are people that are building the solution, and it's not just product going in, getting all the credit and then running with it, you know. So I really think it's a two-way street, and being able to receive the accolades and then also giving it and making sure that you're pulling them all the way through.
And I would also say there's some selfish organizational benefits and personal benefits. So if you're looking at the personal benefits of mentoring or sponsoring someone, a lot of times when you're looking for that person to promote to senior software engineer or lead engineer, you're looking to see if they're doing much mentoring, if they can bring a group of people with them. And so that's one way that being a mentor, being a sponsor can actually help you in your career. But then organizationally, and this goes back to a point that Brian was bringing up, he mentioned there's that person that has a track record of always doing this kind of work. Well, in my experience, that person is swamped. That person gets all of the projects, all of the big projects, and yes, they will do a great job on them. But, you know, from his example, Mike might have 3 of those going right now. And so we want to make sure that we are sharing the knowledge, that we don't silo knowledge on a team. And so organizationally, it makes a lot of sense to share some of those larger projects with someone who is capable, but who hasn't gotten the opportunity yet, because that's new knowledge on the team. And now when you have one of those big projects, you have 2 people you can go to, and you don't have to go to Mike again, and Mike can get some sleep.
And I feel like Mike always appreciates that. So I'd like to kind of open it up to the people listening, to ask questions and you know, to take a minute to sort of fill in any gaps for those listening. Kind of sad, I don't see all of the beautiful videos that I saw when we first got on. I see all sorts of names. But does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
Hey, Valerie.
Hey, Chris.
How y'all doing? Yeah, see a few familiar faces. I guess just a broad wave of the hand is, I was wondering if y'all could talk about burnout at all.
So that's something that we've been trying to address at Mozilla. It's really tough right now. So Mozilla is one of those places where at least 50% of the workforce has already been working remotely. But working remotely and working at home in a pandemic are not the same thing. People have their children at home. There are single people who don't have family with them and who are now working all day because they have the time and there's nowhere else they're going. And so how do you determine if that's burnout or if that's something that they are choosing to do to keep themselves busy? Or if they're using that to kind of take advantage of the fact that they now have this new time. And so we've been checking in with people a lot more than we would typically do. So I think a lot of times I'm a manager, so I'm having one-on-ones constantly. And there are times where pulling like personal information from my team is a little hard because they're like, no, I want to tell you about this work I did. This was really cool. bug I fixed. And I absolutely want to hear about that, but I want to hear how you're doing. I want to hear how your family is coping. I want to hear if you need to move work around, if we need to make allowances for you take some time off. And I would say one thing that I've seen happen is that people in upper management are leading the way. And so for my team, my manager is director of engineering, and he took some time off. He asked everyone to make sure they're taking time off, and then he immediately took a week off. So he was the change that he wanted to see on the team. And so that is something that we can do, making sure that people are using that time that they have.
That is an awesome point about being an example. I mean, how many times do we say these sort of, make platitudes about self-care and how if you're not taking care of yourself, you won't be as productive, but then you feel like you can't take the personal time. You can't step away from the machine. That's an excellent point about, as leaders, being an example of self-care and preventing your own burnout so that the rest of your team feels entitled to do the same. That's wonderful. Yeah, so how is everyone surviving the pandemic? I personally am working remotely with 3 children, trying to do anything deeply technical while homeschooling a 5th grader, a 1st grader, and then keeping the 1-year-old from killing himself, because that's what 1-year-olds do, has been a unique challenge. Like, how's everyone else faring with this, our new normal?
Well, we have good work-life balance at IBM. So we have what we call summer Fridays. So, if you're in corporate HR, nobody better not send you any type of invites for any calls after 12 noon. Obviously, we have a very good work-life balance, so it never was stressful. But I miss traveling, right? I miss hitting campuses. I miss hitting the road. So I have 2 children. I have a 16-year-old daughter. So you can imagine she hates me. I can't go in a room anymore, that kind of stuff. My son, he's video just out. He's just video game, Roblox and Minecraft, and so we're balancing. We haven't made the big jump to go anywhere though, right? I'm just outside of essential items that we pull up to Walmart and have them put it in the trunk. That's about it. But I mean, I'm okay. I do get a little tired because we honored our internships at IBM this year, regardless of the COVID. So this was the first time we ever stood up a 100% remote internship. So it's a lot of work involved in building that out and standing that up. And I have 76 interns here in the state of Georgia. So yeah, you could get burnt out, Chris, but I don't allow it and get burnt out. I exercise my work-life balance.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what's tougher, being isolated by yourself during this or being at home with your family the whole time. I think, the fact that people have an opportunity to congregate and visit, but we can't miss each other if we never go anywhere. So I've been gardening a lot. I got a lot of fish. That's my tilapia aquaponics setup behind me. I got a bunch of outdoor tanks. I've been growing tomatoes. Just for a change of scenery, get away from keyboard for a while, get out in the sun some. So, use what you got around you. Make sure, like you said, that work-life balance is important. Especially early in my career, I was all about the grind and the hustle and trying to just code. And if I wasn't coding and working, if it wasn't billable, then I was reading or doing research of some sort. And I can talk about gardening and DevOps and all that fun stuff and make it all fit. But sometimes a tomato is just a tomato.
Wasn't it Freud who said that? Anyway, so this is actually one aspect of creating an inclusive work environment in these sort of unprecedented times. As was pointed out, we all have different family configurations, different unique challenges to working remotely. And I've been very impressed. In my place of business, I'm the only person on my team that has a very young child. Most everyone else either has slightly older children who are more self-sufficient, or they have a full-time stay-at-home partner. Whereas, you know, my partner is an architect, so we're both hitting it all day. Like, there's no downtime. And I've been very thankful, and it's made me feel more stable in the workplace. The child-free single people who suddenly have more time and less responsibility and no commute have been sort of picking up slack for the parents and trying to redistribute work. And I think it is one aspect of inclusivity. I mean, you know, I went through a pregnancy last year in the workplace, and that was a crash course in how not inclusive the corporate world can be for parents. So it's been really sort of making me feel a little bit better about humanity in general, to see my coworkers step up and say, all right, parents, I'll take a little bit of your work because I've got my sourdough starter, I'm suddenly a gardener, and, you know, I'm living this COVID life, but I'll take some of your work to make everyone, you know, a little bit more even. Have you noticed the same thing? I'll open this to our panelists. Have you noticed your team's just kind of coming together and trying to help each other through this and make everyone feel supported, safe, included?
I would say yes. I mean, for all the above reasons that you just stated, there's a lot of parents that are my peers or managers. And really, we just have open, honest conversations of like, hey, between X and Z hours, I need to homeschool my kid. So I'm going to be unavailable. And at that time, I have this meeting that, you know, with so-and-so stakeholders, could you just like step in, and then we'll catch up later during our one-on-one or at a later time. And, you know, a lot of teammates that are childless, like myself, that are spending their quarantine bartending and like making cocktails, happy to pick up the slack and do that for each other. Because then down the line, you know, knowing that if I have to step away for whatever reason, that my teammates have my back in those cases. And so it's really give and take in that sort of way.
Well, I can't speak for the young folks on my time, but they're not helping me none, right? Nobody's lending a hand for nothing, right? But, you know, we do a lot of, design thinking. So we have multiple work streams. So if I'm busy or I can't do something, nobody bothers me. And again, you know, I'm on a diversity team, right? So I have my pillar, you know, my lane. I'm the only diversity recruiter. There's 4 of us, right, that cover the entire U.S. So nobody kind of bothers me too much, except, you know, now it's more of how can I help, right? What can I do? How can I be an ally, you know? So I try and find a lot of work for them in that aspect.
I've noticed on my team, people are much more flexible about time. We always kind of had to be, because we're a global team. We have people in Europe all the way to the West Coast. So that's always a bit of a challenge. But there are people with young children that have switched their schedules. So they will say not work during the early part of the day, because that's when their partner is going to be working, and they will take care of the children during that time. And they will kind of work in the afternoon to the evening, and then their partner will take over for them. So we've seen a lot of kind of accommodations for people changing up their schedule, or saying like, these blocks of time are, you know, I'm homeschooling, or these blocks of time I'm spending with my family. And there's certainly not been any pushback. There's been just, how do we accommodate that? Which I think honestly is an indication of an inclusive team in or outside of a pandemic.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of us would, if given the choice, we'd prefer to work with people who support us and, you know, want to make sure everyone's happy and thriving. But it's so fun. Back in my previous life, when I got that useless psych degree, I did a lot of study on basically, you know, how people react to other people in need. And I've been both pleasantly surprised and disgusted based on various behaviors on various people's parts through this. But mercifully, I think more people than not are trying to come together and support their teammates, their family members, their fellow man through this, because, you know, we don't know how long it's going to be this way. I'm going to need this to resolve before the next Dev Nexus, though, because I really enjoy going to that conference, and the speakers dinners are always superb. And so I'm really going to need this pandemic to get it together so I can go back to conferences. It's a thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, you're right. You know, my Sky Miles, I'm not, you know, moving up. You know, I paid for Clear, like for the last 40, when they first came out, I got Clear. And I mean, I just thought I was the man, you know, so I'm not getting to take advantage of that, you know, to travel. And, you know, I love my wife. I love my children. You know, I love them so much. I really do. But I gotta, you know, I gotta get some fresh air. I gotta hit a plane and fight with somebody sitting next to me or something. Yeah, I think that, and you know, my household is a little different because we went into the child idea because we both were career oriented, you know, graduates, blah blah blah, and you know, the family thing came about, and I kind of, you know, I didn't want to be on the rat race of, you know, getting your kids to work, to school, then we both go to work, then we get off work, we get to school, you know, the sort of the rat race thing. And so we had decided that, you know, she would be a stay-at-home mom. We would manage the children to a certain age. But now I'm ready for them all to get out, or at least me to get out, or we all just get out for a second.
So actually, Valarie, you bring up a good point, and I think this fits into this conversation on diversity and inclusion, which is during this pandemic, you know, you said that you have teammates pulling, you know, teammates who can picking up the slack or whatever, right? Does anybody have any thoughts on like kind of mental health, like around work and, well, just I guess life in general? And because obviously being stuck at home either with your family or by yourself is probably not good for your mental health, I'm guessing. So just, you know, any thoughts on that? Like, and I heard Chris saying that he's taken up, you know, fishing in his little aquarium behind him, as well as playing the guitar. But yeah, just any thoughts on like kind of how folks are dealing with that on their teams, or just kind of in general?
Yeah,
how that fits into this inclusion kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will throw this out. I was, so we do safe agile framework. And so I was made Scrum Master for a 10-week interval. And I started out every morning stand up with the typical, okay, you know, here's what I did yesterday, here's what I'm doing today. But at the end, we had a mental health check-in, you know, and I went out of my way through that 10-week interval to make sure people were taking care of themselves in basic ways. So you know how with GitHub, you can create a GitHub folder in your repositories, and you can put in a code owner file so that certain people are always flagged for review of a PR, and you can set up a template. And I actually stopped one step shy of adding to the PR template: have you showered in the last 24 hours? Have you had a hot meal in the last 24 hours? Does your code meet our style guidelines? And when did you last drink water? Like, you know, trying to check in on the people on my team and make sure that everyone is actually taking care of themselves was definitely a priority of mine. I don't know, what is everyone else doing trying to take care of your own mental health and or your teammates?
That's the, that reminds me of the 3-2-1 rule, which I heard about through DEF CON. I've never been to DEF CON, but just on Twitter. A level of neurodivergence within the InfoSec community and DEF CON is huge and can be really exciting. The 3-2-1 rule is every 24 hours, you need at least 3 hours of sleep, 2 meals, and 1 shower. If you're not doing that, go to your room. I don't think that's enough. I often shower more than once a day, especially if I've been out in the yard. I try to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. 2 meals a day, I think, is reasonable. You know, healthy stuff, eating veggies, not just carbs all the time. Stretching a lot. I do a lot of yoga, been walking around the neighborhood more. So I think getting out in the sunlight is a problem for a lot of folks too. They don't realize how that can affect them. So it's about that mix and just staying in touch with folks, which is, I'm glad this is here tonight. I think it's good to see some familiar faces. And just what you said, Valarie, just checking in with folks and saying, hey, I really care about y'all. I hope everybody's doing well.
So Erica and Brian, our panelists, I believe are people managers at their companies. So what are the two of you doing, like, to kind of, you know, take into account mental health for your teams during this time?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier checking in with a few of my teammates who are single and living pretty much by themselves, and making sure that they're doing okay. There was, during a lot of the political unrest, one of my engineers is a Black man, and he was really struggling with some of it. And he was struggling with his productivity because he wanted to keep doing and producing in the same way he had been. And he was telling me in his one-on-one that he was really frustrated that he couldn't get something done by the end of the week that he wanted to. And, you know, I had to kind of like put that aside and let him know these are very different times, and to hold yourself to the same standards and the same kind of level of productivity that you held yourself when we weren't protesting every day, and when we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, and when there wasn't everything going on at the same time, is unreasonable. And I don't want, I would rather you be really excited about the work that you're doing. So just really kind of candidly had that conversation with him. And if you needed a day because you couldn't get motivated or you couldn't get excited about the work that day, that was absolutely okay. And I think that kind of gave him permission to talk about some of the stuff that he was going through that was kind of blocking some of his productivity.
Yeah, I second that as well. With everything still going on, definitely opening the door to have those conversations with my teammates. So actually putting time on the calendar to openly speak about the Black Lives Matter movement, civil unrest that's happening, and all of the above, and really put it on the table, like, hey, here's how I feel. How are you all feeling with everything going on? Like, do you need that mental health break? And for myself, really leading by example with actually, instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to be out of office this Friday, being frank with my team, be like, you know, I'm mentally drained right now. Like, there's just a lot on my mind going on outside of work. I need a mental health day. And I encourage you all to do the same when you need it, because I know you have families, or, you know, like you said, you're living on your own. And then, you know, giving the space for people to have the opportunity to be able to like say, yes, like I do too, also need that mental health day. So let me go ahead and take it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great leadership. And I wish all leaders were so in tune to I mean, because again, like I don't believe for a minute that people, that altruism exists, nor do I think it's actually desirable. I think that systems where everyone benefits is better than altruism. And as it turns out, if your employees aren't being taken care of, if they're not being healthy, both physically and emotionally and mentally, if they're not being cared for, they're not going to be as productive. Your product is going to suffer. It all plays into together. And I think sometimes, I think we lose sight of the fact that yes, we need to care for other human beings because they're human beings and that's the right thing to do. But also, we all have jobs. We all create products. We all want our companies to succeed. We want to advance in our careers. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much, panelists. All of the advice and stories you've shared, I think have been really great as far as teaching us and sort of cluing us all into how to support people so that we all can advance, we all can create better products, and we all can just do better. I think, you know, it's about time to wrap up. So I was going to ask, you know, those listening, if we have any, you know, last questions for the actual panelists, great. If not, we could totally just chitty chat. it might just be chitty chat time. And I'm really angry, Pratik. I'm angry that I'm not in the building physically having this conversation with a beer, hanging out with you.
I feel you 1000%. Oh boy.
I think I have one quick question, and then the rest I'll just chit chat later. But I've been a developer for about 20 years, and I've been in different kinds of organizations and in different terms of diversity, in terms of culture. Some have been toxic, some have been very welcoming. And what I found over time is that it's better for a person to move toward the less toxic companies as opposed to the toxic ones. But I think for a newcomer, especially a person who's a minority or the only one in the room, they may not know, they might think this is the norm. And do you have any tips for a new developer starting a company and things just don't seem right and they're wondering, is this normal or not? Because just a quick example, like what I've seen sometimes is if you're the only one in the room, you kind of adopt the culture of the majority and you follow what they do. But when there's kind of like a critical mass of people like you in the company as well, you'll see a more relaxed and more of the culture of that person and that group come out and in the company and also benefit the company. Just that if one thing, if for no other reason that you're more relaxed, like I'm not the only person, they're gonna fire, not gonna fire just me, right? So, but my question is, do you have any advice for someone that's coming into a company and like things to look out for?
I would say the first thing is find a network of people that you can share with, and whether it's just to vent, whether it's just to see how they would handle certain things. I remember maybe a couple of years ago, we were at a Women Who Code meetup at General Assembly, and there was a young woman who had just started her first tech job. And she was trying to say really nicely that they are driving her crazy. And she didn't know like what was happening. And so she would tell us about certain scenarios. She was like, is it me? And she was like, and we were like, no, that's not you. And so sometimes you just need someone to do a sanity check to say, no, that's a very weird environment. And it's not you. And these are some ways that we've dealt with different environments. So I would say the first thing is find a network. Then next I would see like, what does psychological safety look like at the company? I think that's a good indicator, whether the person might be from a marginalized background or not. If anybody on that team feels comfortable bringing up ideas or suggestions, whether they're super junior or senior, or no matter what their level of expertise is, do they feel comfortable bringing up things, possibly being wrong about things at that company? Because if people are scared to be wrong, that's an indication that you might be at a toxic, in a toxic environment. So I would ask around, but I would also build that network.
To add on to Erica, a lot of large companies like, an IBM, we have what's called BRGs, Business Resource Groups, and those are predefined networks already established. And you have multiples in a city like Atlanta. We have women, Black, Latino, LGBT plus, whatever. There's also the developer arm, or you're in a developer, but you're in security. So there's all these pockets of network where you can kind of link in to make sure that's the right fit for you. And it also determines on that human being, right? You have to be kind of confident and safe in your own skin, regardless of who's around you. And I think that that's important today as it was 20 years ago when I started. I could have been run off and feared, but I was confident in myself and my abilities. And that's sort of a survival thing in the large intricacies and webs of corporate America. Some roles in the developer role, you probably project oriented like a consultant. If you're not on billable work, you're not delivering value. So it's really around the mechanics of that job, that company, and your confidence in your skills. I don't let anything too much. So I'm in HR. So, 90% of my peers are all white women, right? There are two males, and there's me, the black guy in diversity, right? So, you have to feel good in your own skin wherever you are. And if you're uncomfortable, then yeah, maybe that's not the right fit.
Hey, everyone. Speaking of diverse home situations, I just got an SOS text from my partner. Apparently, 2 of our 3 children are at the ocean melting down. So I am going to go save him because he has been delightful in keeping the 3 of them alive so that I could do this. I would like to thank everyone who participated. This has been delightful. I wish it were in person, but this has been wonderful for what we're able to do across the miles.
Yep. Hey, Valerie, thanks for moderating, and we'll let you get going and rescue your children.
Oh, no, the children will survive. It's Michael I have to save.
Oh, okay.
See everyone next time.
Thanks, Valerie.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
What are we doing now?
this Zoom
This
call
is
is going to be
the-
open for a while, so I mean, we can all just chit chat, or
Yeah, someone
whatever.
asked if I was wearing a TARDIS t-shirt. Yeah, it is. Doctor Who.
Well, y'all, I'm gonna bail. I got a whole bunch of other things. You forget, even though I've been working from home, I start my day at 8 o'clock. I'm kind of old school. I still start at 8, right? Unless it's been a long night. So I'm way past my nap time for real.
Hey,
so
hey,
you were
Anthony.
going to say something?
Yeah, do you know Tommy Phillips?
I don't know. A lot of folks ask that, right? There are over 375,000 people at IBM.
All right.
So, what does he do, right?
I'll narrow it down. He was a sales guy in the Atlanta area for many, many years. He has retired now. But because seeing as he was an enterprise sales guy, I thought you might have bumped into him.
Yeah. So, what I did is I started out on the product side. And I mastered the product, and then I understand the portfolio where the product was sitting. And so then I moved on to the client exec role. I was just kicking ASS and taking names. And then I got burnt out. Sales is an environment where
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know.
Something more impactful. But hey, you guys keep me plugged in, wherever I can help. Don't overbeat me up with more panel requests, but I can help out where I can.
All right, thank you, sir. Anthony. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, everybody. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could do it again out of the house. So I'm going stir crazy.
You could always do what Valerie did and go down to the beach.
Yeah, I mean, so I've got a 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and the only thing worse than them being in the house tearing it up would be being somewhere where it's not their environment with none of their things driving us crazy. So as much as I would like to go to the mountains or the beach, because that's a really good idea, I mean, I think that would actually be the end of me.
I've been trying to convince my husband to do the cabin in the mountains for a couple of weeks, but he's not feeling it. I don't know why.
Sounds great.
Well, I got a message. I'm going to give a message to Chris on the gardening side. If you put peanuts in with your tomatoes, you get free nitrogen injection. So cross plant, my friend.
Yeah, I've got more tomatoes than I can deal with right now.
Put peanuts. No, put raised peanuts with them.
I'll try that.
Yeah.
That tomatoes are actually in a raised bed. It's just traditional, but I've got a 210-gallon aquaponic system outside that's got.
Oh my gosh!
Good Lord!
Strawberries are growing along, and all my minnows reproduced. So that was sort of the insight of the week. Is all of a sudden I have a lot more fish than I realized. I went from maybe under 100 fish. I might have 500 fish now.
Oh my gosh!
Oh,
So,
exciting stuff.
All right, you win.
Well, the ecologically responsible thing to do would be to go and put all those fish into a local body of water, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There's tilapia in the tank behind me. They got to get a bit bigger. The minnows I can technically sell as bait, but they're like my children. I don't know. You don't think you could get emotionally attached to a fish, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Chris, if they don't physically destroy your house every single day, they are not like children. Trust me.
True.
Yeah, there is carpet in this, so as long as nothing overflows, we're good.
I was going to say the one other piece of advice is even if you may not be a manager, if you are just to check with your team, I set up at least once every other day a question I ask, and it's like, how are you? And then be prepared to just ask that. And it's amazing what your teammates will come back with. You just grab them personally and ask. But if you do, be sure to set aside some time during the day to actually listen. It's a great opportunity to learn a lot about your teammates, but also gives them a great chance to just talk. And it's amazing what will happen from that point of view.
You know, as much as we're on Zoom calls in front of computers all day, last week, the week before, a friend of mine, David Neal, he speaks a lot at conferences on various things. He works at Okta, a security company. He put out a tweet that said, "Hey, I'm feeling kind of lonely. Anybody want to have a Zoom call later on today?" And I jumped on, and I think about, I don't know, 20 other people jumped on that know David. And it actually turned into a bit of a David Neal roast. You were there, weren't you, Pratik?
I was there. It was fun.
Yeah. But the point is, I came off from that feeling. It was a really nice lift to my day. Now, I would see David around at conferences like 3 or 4 times a year or whatever. We'd have some fun. But it was nice to meet other people. I only knew like maybe 2 or 3 other people on the call. But it was a really good, and we just chatted for like half an hour. And it left me feeling really positive. So I think, I'm sure you guys do this, but outside the work thing, if you're a manager, employee, whatever, checking in, just checking with some friends. And you know what? Do it during the day. I mean, everyone's at work, everyone's at home for the most part. Everyone can spare like 20 minutes to do a quick group thing on Zoom or Teams or whatever it is people use.
Yeah, I've gotten, I won't say in trouble, towed the line, but trying to create some space for that at work where it's not so common. I think that's one of the interesting things about a lot of the gigs I get pulled into is I'm typically hired in as a change agent and have a different perspective and skill set from the rest of the org very intentionally. And with a lot of systemic change, an important point to remember is not to change too much too fast. And that was not an option this time. A lot of stuff changed very rapidly when pandemic broke out. Creating opportunities, it's something I have the privilege to do, to ask these questions and create some space for some conversation. And it's worked out well at work, but I think it's part of that work-life balance. I've always been a strong advocate for community efforts like this for that very reason. Your identity as a technologist or an individual shouldn't be tied to your job 100%. You got to get out of that echo chamber at some point and engage. And I think I'm finally warming up to some of the remote stuff. I didn't like the tele stuff starting off. I'm with Valarie. I'd rather meet in person, get out and see people, but got to work with what we've got available here right now.
Hey, speaking of remote work, I've like some other people, in our group have worked remote for a number of years, but I'd like to hear about from some people that this is their first kind of remote work, going from a corporate environment to now you're working from home. And the reason I want to hear is because, my impression is, both that person and the company's kind of been thrown into this with no real processes on how to handle it. I'm just curious as to if anyone on this call has got some experience as to how that's gone.
The org I'm at has responded very well, I think. They got things shifted around in short order. They're not planning on bringing as many people back to the office full time. They shifted a lot of folks to unlimited PTO just to allow some flexibility with time off. So from an organizational perspective, I think it's been the exception to the standard now for a little while that it's kind of weird when I hear people in tech that they need to go into the office for 8 hours every day. That doesn't seem to be the standard anymore, but maybe I'm not talking to the right folks.
I mean, does anyone else have a perspective on, you know, all of a sudden this is like the first time for remote work and how the company's handled it and how you've handled it?
I mean, for my part, like the tools and systems part, that worked itself out within a few weeks, right? Like it was very sudden, very chaotic for a short period of time, and now that's steadied out and it's even. What's much weirder for me is the idea of settling in for the long haul, where it's probably going to be spring or summer of next year before I'm back in an office. And my whole job was in person. My whole job was interactive, and now everything is through a screen. So I'm kind of internally processing, dealing with a complete change, not just to my job, but my lifestyle and my way of interacting with people. And I think that will just take some time. But I'm very curious to hear what other people say.
I agree with that too. I think one of the few things I do miss is those hallway conversations you just have that like inspires some interesting thing that you should then look into later, or being able to like whiteboard with somebody. I still haven't quite figured out how to do that effectively. I feel like everybody just kind of jumbled all over the place. And also having a proper desk. Like right now I'm sitting at my dining room table, and I have been since the beginning of the pandemic. So investing in a proper workspace is definitely another thing I do miss.
Yeah. I don't know about anyone else, but like I loved my job before pandemic, and now my job is just fine. I can do it. It works out. I do it. I finish it. The day is done. But I don't love my work life anymore. And that's not to say I hate it. It's just not that intensely positive, great feeling. And I'm trying to figure out how to recultivate that in my everyday, because it's very important to me.
I echo what was said before about just because you're accustomed to working from home, it's not the same as working from home in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I had a job before where I worked from home for about 5 years. Then I went into the office working in Atlanta, and kind of suddenly going back to working from home, it's a whole different feel. Like back then, like you said, I had an office of space that was just closed doors. I had a real desk. I had like all my monitors and things like that. And I'm also now using my living room table as my desk, and it's not the proper height. So it's definitely a big difference. Plus all of the I'm an introverted person anyway, so I don't really need to be around people, but I do like to occasionally interact with people in real life. So when we kind of opened the office a month ago, I would go in like 1 or 2 days a week just for a few hours, just to actually just be there and kind of see some people and then leave. Like I don't need to stay 8 hours, but I just need to have contact with other human beings.
Yeah, I found that, you know, in this, I mean, I have worked remote for a while, but working remote for me would be, you know, sometimes working at home if I needed both my screens because I'm doing some, you know, whatever I'm doing that needs 2 screens. But most of the time I would go to a co-working space or go to a coffee shop. I would leave the house. So
Starbucks, yes.
Well, Starbucks is too noisy. It's coffee grinders going all day long. Anyway, but the point is, I could leave, and yeah, I still could leave now, and the co-working space is open. But I'm like, I don't know. Just to get me out of this environment, and it actually helps me focus more. I get bored at home frankly. And it's not that I get distracted, I just get bored. And I kind of like, I'm glad I don't have to go check into the office, like I used to. But I like the kind of ambient noise and ambient motion that you get in a work type environment, or that I used to find in a co-working space or a coffee shop, whatever. You'd be doing your thing and there's people moving around and there's snippets of conversation going on, but you're in your own world. And I really miss that.
Yeah, there's energy to feed off of, and now that's just not there.
Yeah, even at the co-working space, I'd have my work friends that I would see whenever I was there, because they would be there too, and we'd chat about something.
Yeah, it's motivating, and it's fun, frankly. I feel like I'm now permanently stuck on like the silent floor of the library where no one's allowed to talk, and it just sucks.
Yeah. I'm in my spare bedroom. It's okay. I've got a desk and all that, but well, I'm actually in an asteroid field right now, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I haven't done the remote equipment splurge. It felt like an impulse earlier on in the pandemic, but I'm tempted to now get a ring light and a camera, like a nice camera, and
a raised desk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's against my nature. I'm not too gadgety. I'm a pretty minimalistic individual. I keep things pretty basic, but it might be fun.
I tell you what,
now's the time, right?
The last thing I invested in was these Sennheiser headphones, and they're gaming headphones. And someone, Beth Lang, who runs Women Who Code Atlanta, turned me onto this. Because I used to be on these calls with my AirPod in, and I hate having something in my ear for an extended period of time. Or I just have the phone on speaker, or the laptop, just use the laptop speakers. But this is really great because it's super light, and I've been wearing it for hour and a half now, and it's not, it doesn't get sweaty because it's really aerated and stuff. And it was a great investment. But you know what? It's taken me how long? When did we start this kind of lockdown? March. It's taken me since then to figure out that this is the right thing for me to have, to do this type of thing a lot.
Well, for me, I'm kind of like Chris in a sense. I've been doing the gardening thing this year. I just ramped it up, but folks, to me, this is the other thing I do now that's been 100 and something degrees out in a day. It's less or so, but it's 90 minutes on, 20 minutes off. It might extend your day, but what you do is you work heads down for 90 minutes, no more than 2 hours, and then you get up and you go walk or exercise or do something that's not hyper focused and sitting in front of a monitor, especially if you're coding or prepping materials. I code all day. I'm working on some training material. I'm going to be working on 3 talks. And I could find myself sitting for 6 or 7 hours, or sorry, maybe not that long, but maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then going, what happened? Why do I have to go to the bathroom? Didn't I just go? And you look, it's 4 hours later. Set those timers. Get up, get outside, walk around, stretch, go check on the tomatoes. Whatever it is you do, give yourself those emotional brain breaks. Even if you may be sitting, maybe that's a great time to just check with somebody, say, how are you doing? And build those emotional contexts. We have to inject that variety ourselves now, where before it was kind of like, I was like Vincent, I'd go to the Starbucks, and anytime anybody called me between 8 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. or 12, I was at a Starbucks every day, 5 days a week, because I needed that variety. Now I have to do it in a different way. So give yourself those breaks.
Yeah, I started buying 5-pound bags of coffee from Whole Bean, from Rev Roasters in Smyrna, who I will endorse. And I've been drinking that for weeks, and eventually got a little buggy and decided to go get a coffee from Starbucks and pulled through the drive-thru. And I think it ruined it for me. It wasn't good anymore. Wasn't expecting that. Trying to drink more tea now too. Just keep things, to your point, yeah, it sounds like good Pomodoro practice with the timers. I had a kitchen timer. Yeah, got a little kitchen timer here I use for that.
You know, I don't drink much coffee. The only time I would really get a coffee is when I would go to Starbucks to work, or sometimes on my way to the co-working space. And like now that I don't do that, I'm like, oh, I actually haven't had a cup of coffee for, I can't even remember the last time I had a cup of coffee.
That's the one thing I don't miss. I do that every morning. Make a cup of coffee.
Yeah, same. It's like I'm a heavy sleeper, so my alarm clock is in the kitchen and it's next to the coffee maker. So I hit the alarm clock, turn the coffee maker on at the same time, and that's like a daily. I won't mess with that one.
Yeah.
I must tell you what I used to do years ago, because my mother was Italian. So I grew up with those little stovetop coffee makers.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it
yeah.
only makes like one espresso or two espressos or whatever. It's called a cafeteria. And there's this whole process for it. It's this 3-piece aluminium thing. You got to unscrew it, and then you pat the coffee, you know, grinds into the little sieve thing, and then you fill the top with water, or the bottom with water rather. And you put it on the stove, and you wait for it to bubble, and start whistling. And then so it's not just like it was a little bit of a ritual. You know, it took some effort to get that really nice cup of coffee, but for me that was just more of I used to do this when I lived by myself because I didn't have anything else to do, and no distractions. But it was like this little ritual which I'm now remembering. Maybe I need to get one of those again.
Yeah, I have friends that are kind of appalled that I'm drinking ground coffee now. They're like, really? You're not having like Nescafe or anything? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm drinking now. It's enough. I don't need to, because I have a French press, but again, the effort of like pushing the thing down and grinding the coffee beans, I'm like, no, I just need straight caffeine.
You know, you can buy the ground beans already, Vincent, right? You know, it is 2020 after all.
No, but I still got to do it in the water and plunge it. I'll just boil a kettle.
So what you're saying is the UX of the coffee press is just way too much.
Yeah, too many steps.
Too many clicks.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to hear the flip side of this question, right? Like those who have been working remotely for a long time, what do you love about it that hasn't changed, that maybe someone who's new to working remotely could learn to appreciate?
Well, I like the flexibility, okay?
Yeah.
Because you know, life happens. All right, so working remotely, it gives you a chance to go do life outside of not being able to do it for like an 8-hour period, if you know what I mean, or however long it takes from you leave the home to go to the office, and then by the time you get back again. And I don't know what those life things are. They could be anything. You know, it could be taking a package to the post office. I don't know, or fixing something real small that's been just bugging you for weeks. It's the flexibility to be at home for when life things like that happens that I really do love.
And just to piggyback on that, like being able to work from anywhere too, right? You mentioned kind of going to the coffee shops and getting a different environment, but there are times where, you know, I had to help my dad somewhere and I can work from Augusta instead of, you know, having to go into the office. True. And so I don't have to take a day off to help my dad. I can actually do both. That's something I still love about working remotely.
Yeah, and I would like, you know, one of the things that I would do in the past was like, you know, our family, we wouldn't go on like a big vacation. We'd go on lots of short breaks, you know, like a 3-day weekend or something. So I would just take Friday or whatever, or Monday if the kids are out of school, and we just go somewhere. And I could still work wherever you know, to Erica's point, wherever I am, I can still do whatever I need to do, you know, on the way there, on the way back, or when I'm there. And luckily, you know, fortunately, the kind of job I was in and kind of company I worked for and the kind of boss I had mainly, nobody cared what I was doing as long as I met my deliverables. You know, that's a great plus of being remote. It's something that you obviously don't get when you need to go to a building. You know, if you're not there, you're not there. And maybe someone's going, well, where are they? But also that depends on your management too and how they feel about it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. It's really hard to micromanage a person remotely. So that's a benefit for sure.
One of the things I don't like, it's not that I don't like about it, that's challenging is that, and then we all face this these days. Well, we all face this because we work in the tech business and we're all so connected with our devices 24/7. It's harder to just switch it off, and one of the, it was easier when I had a job where I went there and came home, and then I didn't really do anything till the next day for the most part. Started working remotely, that's really not the case. But that's more about me because I'm a workaholic.
Yeah, I think it's easy to lose track of time. My boss actually last week is like, at 5 o'clock, I want you to actually log off your computer, turn it off. He's like, just walk away. Like, you're done. Don't. It's really easy to kind of like just slip off and just keep going, and then I can do some coding while I watch TV, and I can eat my dinner right here, or no, just stop, take a break, take a nap, go to sleep, do other things.
But I really like the freedom of being able to follow a thought and then take a break when it makes sense to take a break, and not be structured into we're going to be in meetings for these many hours, we're going to be at lunch at this hour. It's a more natural schedule.
Yeah.
It's great meeting everybody. I'm gonna call it a night.
Yeah.
All right, Brian.
See
I'm
ya.
out.
Thank you.
Good talking to y'all.
Thanks again, Brian. Really appreciate it. Great perspective. I think there's a call that I'm on every 2 weeks of some folks that used to see each other at conferences a lot. It's at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock Eastern, because it's like 1 o'clock California, which is where most of them are. And it's real cool and casual. People drop on and off however long they want to be there. I think the other day I was on it for about 40 minutes and I had to go. And then I kept seeing screenshots on Twitter for the next 4 hours. People just kept going. Not everybody, because there was less and less people in the screenshots, but they were having fun.
Has anyone else, like the company you work for, try to create activities, like online activities, to kind of keep the togetherness going? Like, we had a thing a couple of weeks ago. We had a Netflix party, and we watched I forgot what it's called, but it was like this rom-com, and all the while we were all commenting and making jokes, and that was really fun. I like those kind of ideas.
We've done Gametopia nights, and I've got to actually reorganize. I haven't organized one in about 3 weeks, but we get together about once every 2 weeks and pick whatever game was available. We all jump on and we all play like various card games, board games, whatever. It's really cool.
Oh, that's cool. Gametopia?
Yeah, I think it was. Let me look it up. It's actually been about 3 weeks since I did it.
How about LAN parties? Is anyone getting back into that now that we're back in the
It'll be internet LAN. Well, double LAN.
What was it? Vincent, I'm looking up the name of it. Give me a sec. I'll find it.
Gametopia.
It's not Gametopia. It's something else, and I can't believe I forgot. Let's see.
We've been using Roll20 for D&D. I would never have guessed my D&D games would have continued. It's wonderful.
Roll20?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Nice technology.
Hey, Melanie, where'd you get that T-shirt?
Isn't that great? It matches my horse.
It does.
It's good to see everyone's faces. Sorry, I'm not videoing. I'm just burned out on Zoom today.
So for those on the call that aren't aware of what that T-shirt is, we gave it away at DevNexus last year to speakers and basically whoever wanted one. But it's the Millennium Falcon, but it's got a serial number on it, which is the serial number of the Starship Enterprise. It's kind of real small in one of the quadrants, and it's one of those kind of things where if you get it, you get it, and it's like, it's wrong.
The best part is my team is the enterprise engineering team, and my counterpart has the next generation team. So next gen,
Oh,
fantastic. Bert, I love your background.
Thanks.
Speaking
Yeah.
of,
so my thought.
Vincent, it's Tabletopia.
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 I'll look that up. So my next thought for the Dev Nexus shirt, one of the ideas I had was going to be Star Wars: The Wrath of Han.
Oh, nice.
And you know, I like doing it real subtle and see who notices.
No, it'd be Star Trek: The Wrath of Han.
Yeah, sorry, Star Trek: The Wrath of Han. Yeah,
yeah, I like
that's
it.
what I meant.
That's good.
Star
That's
Trek:
good.
The Wrath of Han.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
It's fun. There are people who get really upset when I'm wearing those shirts. Like the Star Wars Star Wars Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
People are like, that's wrong. It's so wrong.
Oh, I know. That shirt started so many nerd wars, man.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Go the other direction, do Khan Solo.
Khan Solo.
Khan Solo. Oh, yeah. Khan Solo and the Temple of Doom.
Ooh, ow.
Oh. Shatner with a whip. There you go.
I was trying to think of
And
something I can mix with Battlestar Galactica, because I'm a huge Battlestar Galactica fan. But I haven't quite thought through that one yet.
You could just go with the Schwartz. Call it a day.
What?
Call it
The Schwartz.
The Schwartz.
Yeah.
Spaceballs.
So it's really funny.
Spaceballs the movie, Spaceballs the lunchbox.
It's really funny with this year's Dev Nexus one, that kind of Enterprise and Millennium Falcon mashup silhouette thing. I was like on Google on GChat with Stephen Chen. Those that know him, Stephen works for JFrog. He runs developer advocacy there. And I was kind of hacking these designs together in like Keynote. What was hilarious about this is that Stephen and I were online together going over various options for 4 hours. It wasn't like I was like, "Hey, Stephen, how about this?" And he was like, "Why don't you change it to that?" And that just turned into like this 4-hour marathon of just iterating on this design.
Wow.
Hey, you make time for the things you love.
I guess, right?
Well, everybody, I think I'm going to head out. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
Thanks, Erica. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to bow out too, folks. Y'all have a great night, and we will talk to y'all later.
Nope.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do the same.
I think we hit the tipping point.
We did. All right, everyone. I'll
All
end
right,
the call.
guys.
Live long and prosper.
Wait, let me find the leave button. Okay, good. Now.
Can you find the leave button before I find the end button? Have a good night.